Cowardice asks, the question, is it safe? Expediency asks, the question, is it politic? Vanity asks, the question, is it popular? But conscience asks, the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Well, welcome everybody. It's the Freedom Link. It's the 9th of December, 2023. Scotty and I are here and talking about globalism. Boy, do we, it's a term that got thrown around a lot 10 years ago or so. It really kind of fell off the radar, but boy, is it back and screaming, man. I mean, like, I really think it got supercharged here recently with Jones going on Tucker Carlson, and I don't know, he kind of lit the internet ablaze. And now that Musk is talking about putting him back on X, it you know, you've got everybody, I'm gonna leave, and all this stuff. Yet Linda Yacanero comes out and says, oh, by the way, we have 10 million new users this month because of their commitment to privacy and this whole community notes thing that we'll get into later, how you can use that. And it's just I don't know, I find it a little refreshing that there's a little pushback, pendulum swinging the other way on the control freaks, just a little bit.
Right. I mean, they've had such a grasp on social media for so long, right?
Yeah.
It was, you know, we used to refer to it as the internet gulag, right? Because when these social media platforms first launched, there was very little oversight or restrictions. It was very loosey-goosey, and it allowed everyone to, well, I mean, as it should, it allowed everyone to have free and open dialogue and debate and whatnot, and information was freely available, and there wasn't much censorship. I mean, there was always an element of it, but in the beginning, it was a much more, like you said, loosey-goosey sort of operation. And that's where you saw a lot of the rise of alternative media, and a lot of that alternative information was going around and gaining traction and getting popular. And I mean, if you remember Alex Jones and InfoWars, probably had one of the largest Facebook groups out there, if not, I would say it was massive. I mean, it was huge, you know. And the thing is that they got everybody onto these platforms, dependent on using these platforms, and then these platforms were kind of like the only game in town. And so when it came time, they were able to just pull the rug out from everyone, hammer down on the censorship, and there was nowhere else to go. That's the problem. There was no alternatives.
Right. Yeah.
And so
now, well, that, and you know, here's the other thing too. Back in the early days, way back in 20-odd-5 and whatnot, it wasn't about money. That was the big thing. It wasn't about money. And when it became about money, it was kind of like the road to hell is paved by good intentions. Money gave independent media the ability to be able to do more, cover more, travel to events, investigate much more, thoroughly, let's just say, spend more time doing it, documentaries, the whole kit and caboodle. Well,
Right.
then all of a sudden, like you say, AdSense comes around, and then Google goes and pulls the rug out from under everybody. And in doing so, really neuters the independent media and institutes a measure of control, not only through the money thing, but through community guidelines. And it just ends up being this nightmare situation for so many people that actually, the mistake was, for a lot of people, they made it their primary source of living, which, of course, hey, you do what you love to do. But it was a vulnerability that I think Google knew about. They exploited. Other ones, PayPal did it. And it was all activist based, but in the name of what? In the name of equality, in the name of whatever. We'll get into that too, because all of that language, it's very important to understand that they may change the terminology, but the goals and everything are the same, right?
And the fact that there were no alternative platforms to go to, which, like you said, now we're starting to see the pendulum kind of swing back, and the fact that Elon Musk now owns, X, formerly, Twitter or whatever, is huge, because Elon is like this wild card that they weren't really, I don't think they really had a plan for, right? He you can't really threaten him with money or anything like that, because he's already got the money. In a way, he's sort of to the corporate world what sort of like Trump is to the political world, right?
Yeah.
He's able to bankroll himself, and merely threatening him with oh, well, we're not gonna give you advertising money or whatever. He's like, I don't care. I already have all the money that I need.
Right.
This doesn't scare me, or it's not going to cause me to do anything. So the fact that he owns X, and X is now,
that is huge, and that's why they vilify him so much. They have to. Why? Because they can't control him. And
right, because
and
before,
when he bought X,
they would just kick you off of Twitter.
That's
and
right.
Then,
they had total control.
They would use and then they would say, well, if you don't like it, start your own alternative,
right?
Or start your own media.
And that's why Trump
media.
did his Truth Social, right? Because there was no competition. So he says, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to start an alternative to that, which is great. It's wonderful. I don't think anybody envisioned Musk actually following through with that, but he did. I think that the intention was always there. It was never about making money. That's not what the intention was. The intention was he's already made all that money. He doesn't need any more money.
And to start a social media platform from the ground up, and start basically cold turkey, and have to
crazy resources
is very, very
time consuming,
very hard, and usually fails. It usually fails. I've seen so many alternative social media platforms come and go, pop up, and just die out. I mean,
very hard to keep up with the bandwidth and the cost associated with that, the servers, all of that. You're talking level of scale increases very rapidly.
But when Elon bought Twitter, he already had the infrastructure. He already had the user base. Everybody was already there. And so that's like a huge game changer, because he didn't have to start from scratch.
And what's amazing is he's not going to, in the grand scheme of things, lose on this.
No.
It is, if anything, all these people that say, "Oh, I'm leaving," and everything else, there's no alternative. What are you going to do? Go over to Meta, do something like that? That's great. You're going to be talking in an echo chamber, and that's the problem. Is people don't want that.
The tables have been turned on them, because now you get all these, the snowflakes and all that are like, I'm gonna leave because Elon said something mean, or
but they're all still
putting
there.
somebody back on, and so
They're all still there.
My response to them is, go start your own social media platform. Isn't that what you told us? And so
they're all still there.
They're all still there. They're at the end of the day,
that's
not
right.
Going to leave, and
I want to bring this up here. This right here. This is what got me going this week, and I thought this was fantastic. Now, anybody that doesn't know, Tucker went on Jones's television show, probably 5 years ago, maybe even longer than that. It was a long time ago, and they talked about a lot of things that, to me, was kind of like the starting point from where Tucker. I want to say that Jones was pretty instrumental in helping Tucker establish a core audience when he went to Fox and then started really kind of honing in on things.
I think Alex was also pretty instrumental in, quote unquote, red pilling Tucker. I think
exactly right. So there's a lot. There's a good symbiosis there, and that interview kind of brought it all bubbled it all to the surface, because here's a guy, right, that gets 13-14 million views on X and is so popular. You can't get that kind of coverage on network television, pulling a 13 or a 14 rating like that. So you're talking prime time type of exposure, and it's something I think Jones sorely needed to be able to get his story out, to talk about the deplatforming that went on, that is very much like we were talking about, only he was deplatformed to the point where he couldn't even have bank accounts. They were closing his bank accounts because of who he was, and it was all related to Sandy Hook, and the fallout from there. And all he ever did was question the validity of it, and rightfully so, because there were questions that never got answered.
And he had people on from that had both points of view, and that's the thing.
Absolutely.
Is that he really didn't take a stance either way. He was just merely questioning things, and but we all know how that turned out. And what's interesting is that I believe, I think it was Tucker or somebody had they got in contact or sent some information to Elon Musk, because I don't even, it didn't sound like that Elon even understood why Jones was originally deplatformed from Twitter, because Elon was under the understanding that it was because of Sandy Hook that he was deplatformed from Twitter, when that's not the case.
No, that's not it at all.
That's not even why he was deplatformed from Twitter. It was because of the was it when he went up to Washington and he confronted Jack Dorsey and the head of Google and all of that stuff,
right in the halls of Congress.
Right, and then Twitter banned him because they said he was
he's like a bully.
He was like bullying people or whatever. Completely ridiculous. So that's why he was deplatformed. And it got Twitter. It got so bad.
It got so bad that anybody that mirrored a video of Jones, their channels got deplatformed. Right. I'll give you an example. So my wife, who doesn't do any real social media stuff much at all, outside of she watches things from time to time, but she had this channel she's had for 20 years, right? And she used to put videos up from time to time about chemtrails and about things that of importance to her. And one of them was her call into the Alex Jones show that spurred me to go blow the whistle on the Red Force, Blue Force stuff and how to use Fed BizOps, and that kind of launched the whole thing. Well, her channel got closed down simply because she had that phone call on her YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You know, just because it was Jones. And that's crazy. That just goes to show you how incredibly rigged the entire system is, you know, from start to finish, controlled. Right. Everybody critiques China, but look at what we have here in America and tell me that it doesn't rival China. I mean, it's nuts. Tonight, we're going to get into the United Nations and their sustainability development goals and things like that. I'll explain where they came from, how we got here, and more importantly, if you go and watch this interview with Tucker and Jones, you'll kind of hear how they've accelerated this this plan. You know, we used to say and cover America 2050 quite frequently because 2050 was the goal. 2050 still is the goal. However, they've really kind of moved things up, and they're using very, let's just say, appeal to emotion like there's no tomorrow. You know, it's really what it boils down to.
That propaganda video that you showed me before the show was quite. You want to talk about fear mongering and really trying to appeal to emotion and get people invested, and then you wonder why you have people like what are they called, the Extinction Revolution, you know?
Among
you
others,
why
yeah.
you have groups like that running around whenever they're being fed this sort of death cult like propaganda that, you know, we only have 10 years left to live before everybody dies, you know.
Right.
Right, you know.
So funny enough, this all came about because we haven't really gone over the United Nations, you know, the dark side of it, and it's the manipulative side of it. You know, we know that the United Nations would never, ever work in the construct and how they ever defined it. It was never meant to work that way. It's more of a cover. You know, all of the stuff you see, the UN Security Council, all that crap. There's always somebody that's going to veto a resolution. So you don't ever have to worry about any resolutions coming out. And even if they did, they don't have any teeth. So really what it is you have a bunch of wars that are going on. And they have to do this to keep things chaotic, because if they can do that, and if there's enough fear throughout the world, then they can control people. And it's this video here that just goes to show you just how much they depend on crisis to achieve their goals. It's important. Things are going to get worse, not because they have to get worse, but because they're going to make it worse to achieve their goals. What are their goals? Well, the Georgia Guidestones had some of those goals, one of them being reduce the world population down to 500 million people, something that the Carlson and Jones talked about. And it is still, let me ask you this, Scotty. With the whole abortion thing and understanding where that came from, where Planned Parenthood came from, you know, Sanger was instrumental in really bringing this about. And if you don't know who Sanger is, she was the Margaret Sanger was the one that basically part of the whole brain trust that is responsible for a depopulation scheme. This was central to that, not to make it. You just basically make it an option, right? And then the second part, the second part is you gotta break up the family. Break up the family, because if you can break up the family, put both the men and the woman to work, right? They tend not to have more kids. Next thing you know, your birth rates start to plummet in your first and second worlds, and you achieve depopulation really through attrition is what you're doing. China proved it with the one-child policy for what? A generation, maybe two? It's destroyed them. Thailand, Japan, they're destroyed because they have a population crisis. There's going to
Well,
be
and
pain associated with it.
and this was all birthed out of the eugenics movement of the early 20th century, and the Margaret Sanger was part of that, and not only that, I mean, the fact that this was literally done for racial reasons. On top of that,
That's
you see
right. They didn't want as many blacks born, right? So
right.
let's
She
kill them.
called them, like weeds that needed to be exterminated. And you
That's
saw
correct.
the picture of her doing a speech over at a KKK, Klan rally, and all
let me
of this
say
stuff.
this. Let me say this. I get it. You have to have a way for women to be able to manage their reproductive health in a safe manner where coat hangers are not the way things are done, backdoor surgeries and all this stuff, because what ends up happening, the same thing that happens with the fentanyl crisis that you have going on in America now. You have made things illegal to the point where people have found workarounds that are 100 times worse than they ever could be if you just left things alone to begin
And
with.
another thing is that making that decision should always be like a last resort emergency sort of like, oh my God, this isn't something that should be encouraged. And what they're doing is they're encouraging it, and they're making it just like
Yeah, they're selling
willy-nilly,
it.
just they're selling it, oh, this just go and do it, this is what everybody's doing, and
But
this is the way, so to
and then the DOJ is
that's the issue.
the DOJ is persecuting pro-life organizations and people while funding. Remember, Planned Parenthood gets federal funding, whereas pro-life organizations, they don't get federal funding. They get persecuted. Now, that doesn't mean that, like I said, people should have a safe way to women need to have a safe way to deal with their reproductive health.
Right,
It's
right,
that simple.
but
You don't, and no one can tell you what to do with your body. And you can't have it both ways. It can't be that with, the jab. It can't be that with this, but it can be that with this. No, it is, your body is your property. If you go and you take that away, right? You're basically telling us property rights don't mean spit in the United States, when property rights is central to the whole United States philosophy. It's what we were founded upon is property rights.
We have no autonomy.
It's crazy. So if you take that away, then you basically are telling everybody, that you have no property rights, which would be exactly what the control freaks want. Because they don't want anybody to have any private property. They don't want you to be in control of your body or your reproductive health or your health in general. They want to control that, and they will control that. So there's a whole lot that goes into this.
right, and so that's where we're at, and that's just one sort of point on this graph with many points on it of the depopulation agenda that they've been working on, right? So making abortion this kind of nonchalant, it's just a doctor visit kind of thing, kind of glorifying it as, well, hey, this is just the way that the modern woman, this is just how things are, and this is just part of it, and instead of, it's a tough decision that, like I said, it should be a last resort or an emergency sort of situation. And then, all of this other stuff, like you said, the breaking up of the nuclear family, encouraging, people not to marry, not to have kids in general, you're muted. But
There, that's better.
Yeah.
Now they're putting billboards up in Thailand. They're talking about making it, giving incentive where they will pay you to have kids. In
Right.
China, they're starting to encourage it. Why? Because they're screwed and they know it. They know it.
And
You
I think this also contributes to the demoralization and how unhappy people are. Um, right? That they've been taught you don't need to get married. Just like a lot of women, you know, you need to be a career woman. You're empowered by not getting married and letting some man boss you around and having children and being a housewife or whatever. But then by the time these women reach like their
Yep.
40s and 50s and they don't have children, they're
Yep.
miserable. They all of a sudden kind of are regretting a lot of the decisions that they've made in life.
Oh man.
And it starts.
And then look
to
at all
form,
these kids that transitioned. Look at all
Right.
these kids that transitioned, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh man, did we make a mistake?" And they're screwed for the rest of their life. They can't. They're done.
And
And
then
they have to
you
live with
also
it. You've destroyed them.
you also have a whole generation of young men who are completely unhappy, who feel completely neglected and just
Yes.
like forgotten because they're afraid to even try and pursue a relationship because of all of the baggage that comes in a societal sort of expectation and sense of them. They have to walk on eggshells just to even try and engage with a woman, and talk to them because of cancel culture and things that they could be accused of doing and things like that. And a lot of men just have thrown up their hands and said, you know what, I'm not even going to deal with it right now. I'm
That's
not
right.
I'm not even going to do this. And so you just have an entire
about-
population of people who are just lonely and depressed
Until
and,
until you
yeah.
can perfect AI, right? And then
Right.
AI, now you have your AI companion, which you see more and more with like that site Replica and others where you can find the perfect person that's tailored to you, even down to going to have a robot made for you. And who knows, pretty soon that robot will be fully functional. More so, like it'll do the dishes and it'll go to dinner for you. It may not be able to eat, but hey, who knows? Maybe it'll have like a built-in incinerator. I don't know. Or Mr. Fusion, right? This is
Right.
interesting. So I pulled up the total fertility rate by country for this year. And I want you to know that this is a great site, this database Earth, because what it does is it kind of gives you projections on where this is going. It gives you current, you can look back, you can look forward. And that's the nice thing. So you can see how birth rates have plummeted really over the past 5 years, but really over the past 50 years, they have really plummeted. So in order for a country to be able to sustain its population, it has to have a fertility rate above 2.1 kids per household, right? So you have man, you have woman, and you have 2.1 kids on average. So that will maintain a steady population. In order to gain a population, you kind of need to have it above 2.2 into 2.5-ish territory. So as you can see, the lighter the color means the less kids are being had in that particular region. So let's look at the United States. The United States has 1.66 births per woman. So what does that mean? That means that we are losing population. As time goes on, we will have less young people and you will have more older people. The only thing that they say has saved the United States, I beg to differ, is immigration. Immigration, if done properly, would save the United States. However, what's happened is it's been allowed to happen in a reckless way to where not only do you have the severe strain on your social welfare programs that were never designed for this kind of thing. Hell, they were never designed for what they're intended for in the first place. But now they're exceptionally strained. I can't see that. And so what do? You have, thank you. Let's see. Births have done, and now deaths are skyrocketing. Deaths are skyrocketing, absolutely. So you have births going down, and you have a lot of excess deaths going on. Perfect. Great point. So immigration has caused a significant strain. It gives you a security risk on top of that, because now what happens as this Israel and Gaza conflict goes on? Iran becomes more involved. At what point does Hezbollah say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and wake up these sleeper cells in the United States? And if you look at the number of combat age men that have crossed the border from the Middle East, it's staggering. Those are the ones that got documented, that we know that are here. But how many are here that we don't know? How many made it across the border? And we have no idea. Now, maybe the CIA does, maybe Buffdale, Utah does, maybe there's some sort of something there, but as far as we're concerned, we have no idea the kind of threats that exist within our borders right now, all because of immigration. So you can't look at it as immigration as the one thing that's going to save the United States from this burgeoning population crisis. That's not going to happen at all. Canada is really bad, 1.46. So they're in the doldrums. You know, you take a look
How
at
bad is Japan? Yeah, Japan's horrible. Yeah, Japan has some of the worst birth rates.
Right. But even Russia, 1.51, they've just gone and taken a generation of men and killed them, right? Ukraine, 1.2.
Wow.
They have nobody left. Everybody now that they're sending into the war is in their 40s and 50s. That population is done. See, so here's another thing too, and this is where you have to think not just tactically, but realistically. You have a country now that won't be able to sustain itself even past this current generation. What do? Do you keep on funding a war that you know that they're not going to be able to man? Who's going to man it when all of a sudden all of the 40s and 50-year-olds run out? What are you going to send the women and the children out there to fight? It doesn't make any sense. And this is where, you know, you have to really contact your non-representing representatives and let them know where you stand on this, that it makes absolutely no sense. But look at around the EU. Poland, 1.46. Ukraine, we saw. Hungary, 1.58. Czech Republic, 1.69. Germany, 1.53. They have a big problem right now. Even the Netherlands, everybody is below 2. No one is keeping up with the birth rate except for Afghanistan. They're having a ton of kids. Pakistan.
The Rockefeller Foundation.
Yeah. How about Africa? Look at Africa. Angola, 5.12 births per woman. Democratic Congo, 6. How about Niger? 6.66. All I'm saying is Africa seems to be, just by birth rate alone, is where you're going to see the center of power.
What's Somalia?
Come about.
Somalia looks like it's pretty green. Right there on the edge.
Hold on. We got Somalia at 6.09.
Yeah. And
Ethiopia.
So,
you remember all those commercials on television about Ethiopia and the droughts and how everybody is just, they're all dying over there and everything. Almost 4 births per woman in Ethiopia. Ethiopia and the African Republic is not struggling in terms of population.
Right. And the argument that they would make, right, is that they say, okay, when you're an impoverished people and you have high mortality rates, your natural inclination is to produce more in order to sustain your population, right? Because if people are dying of starvation or drought or whatever, you just have more kids.
Right,
If
right.
if you have a child that dies of hunger or whatever, you just have more kids and whatnot. So that could probably maybe be the argument of why a lot of these African nations are at a higher birth rate. But still, I don't know.
Well, here's the other thing too. Think about this. In Africa, they are basically at the pre-industrial industrial revolution phase of
Right,
their country, right? Of their
right.
respective continent, where you don't have the labor laws that, if you think about it, how would we logically respond as human beings if, like, take this current crisis, for example, here in the United States? Let's select housing as one of them. So housing now is unaffordable for a single family. And just like during the Great Depression, what did people do? Prior to the Great Depression and everything else, when there was no safety net, you had multi-generational housing. That was a commonplace thing at that time because of necessity, because houses weren't built as fast, they weren't as numerous. It was an agrarian society. You needed more people under the same roof. You needed to have 20 kids. Why? Because it was typically a farm life. Or if it wasn't, you needed to send them to go to work as soon as they
You
possibly could.
you literally needed to produce your own workforce.
That's right.
Is essentially is
That's right.
essentially
And
how it
people
was.
did. And people
Yeah.
did. Well, now, you had a lot of warehouse accidents. You had a lot of production accidents. You had a lot of um, abuse. And what happens? The government has one tool in their toolbox, and it's a hammer. And that's how they fix everything. So now you have these egregious labor laws that are in place that restrict most kids from working until they become adult age. Very, very not commonplace anymore for a 12, 13, 14-year-old to work. They just don't. So,
Right. And nobody is suggesting that like a 9-year-old
no,
should be in a coal mine or anything like
absolutely
that. But
not.
what we're saying is that they have
Things have
we
changed
are now
greatly, whereas in Africa,
yeah
that's not the case.
right exactly. And
So they do. They're at that
mhm.
time. They're at that
Right.
time in their progression where the
Yeah,
9-year-old
why do
is
you
in a
think we
diamond
hear all
mine.
right? Why do you think we hear all the stories of kids in the cobalt mines mining the cobalt for your EVs and your electronics, and you're mining your lithium and everything out there in Africa because they're at that point, and
That's right. And look at this. 12-year-olds used to mow lawns and wash cars. Absolutely. Some of them still do. You
absolutely, yeah,
still have the
yeah.
entrepreneurial kids, but most of them don't. I used to pick tobacco in the summer right down in Connecticut. You go down and the farmer would pay you $20 a day. You'd show up at a certain time and you'd pick tobacco all day, make $20. It was the best $20 you ever made. Sucked like hell, but you did it.
And I think if you're like a 12, 13, 14-year old or whatever, and everybody is cool with you going out and
It was normal. There was a whole,
getting a little getting a little
there
cheddar,
were a
right?
bunch of kids there
Doing a
that
little
showed up. Parents would drop off the kids for
yeah,
the day and they would
doing a
go
little
pick
side
tobacco.
hustle and all that. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
and it teaches them, the value of
Yeah, right.
of work and
But you
making
can't do that
money
today.
and
It's like Ange just said,
no.
Ange just said you do that, you end up losing your kid now. Not
Right,
maybe to
right.
DCF, but maybe they'll get taken or they'll be put into some sort of abuse ring or some sort of slave. You just don't know these days. It's crazy, crazy. And the issue comes down to what's been seen can't be unseen. And once you go there, it's very hard to reverse the damage that's been done because that's why prohibition sucks so bad. That's why once you have like a level of theft that becomes commonplace. It's very hard to reverse that behavior without doing things to correct the issues that created them in the first place. You know, so like the border situation, you really have to shut that border down. You really have to figure out who the hell got in here, you know, and what are they doing? And then it's like, what have we created because we had to do that? You know, oh my God. Now we have to use this police state power and everything like that to find these people, and then people get used to it. And then what happens? Now we're where we are now. You know, we're China. Because we are. And it's sad. It's sad that people still say, well, you know, we have to defend freedom and democracy. We're not defending anything like that. Those are just words. They're just words. It's really sad. And it's a red alert, according to the UN. You know, this is all a big problem for the UN. So we're gonna see just how big a red alert this is to the UN. Check this out, folks. And oh, by the way, while this is going on, check out on the side all of the sustainable development people that talk about this stuff.
Eight years left to end poverty and hunger, to halve global emissions. It didn't start out as planned. We're not moving in the right direction. Years of progress lost in the pandemic. Escalating conflicts, climate breakdown. So where are we now? For decades, we successfully fought poverty. Now it's on the rise again. 1 out of 10 suffer from hunger, more people than ever forced out of their homes. Climate disasters increasing. Droughts alone estimated to displace 700 million people by 2030. This year, CO2 emissions hit a new record. At this rate, annual emissions will be 14% higher in 2030. Meanwhile, fossil energy receives $700 billion in subsidies from governments.
Your government.
Safe water and sanitation not made accessible fast enough. Progress must quadruple to cover all people by 2030. Women are held back at all levels. At this pace, by 2030, 825 million children won't have secondary level education. Human rights, health, and equality all hurt in the wake of war and disaster. Disrupted economies, food and energy crisis, and galloping costs of living damage global solidarity. Everything interconnected.
Appeal to emotion.
Everyone intertwined.
All appeal to emotion.
It's interesting because you know, they talk about, you know, well, poverty is on the rise. And it's like, well, who's responsible for that? Right. I mean, these are the policies that they've implemented. So they're telling you there's a problem when they're the ones that created it. And this is on like all levels of this, right? And you know, we'll get through this, but there's some things I want to unpack about this video that I whenever we get done. Yeah.
Business as usual won't cut it. Even though we made progress before, going back to pre-pandemic ways is not enough. We need a new paradigm built on the pillars of our 17 goals. Rethink conventions, flip the orthodoxies. Governments, organizations, corporations, citizens of the world, Snap out of it. It's time for bold climate action. To act for women and girls. For social justice and inclusion. Scale up the transition to renewable energy. Create 85 million green jobs. Phase out fossil fuel subsidies and tax carbon. $2.8 trillion. Keep your promises. Support developing nations. Write off debts. Free up $1 trillion for climate resilience, people and communities. $500 billion for Africa to achieve universal energy access by 2030. Commit to a circular economy now. New, resilient food systems. They can cut waste by 17%. Strengthen domestic financial institutions. Make insurance and banking accessible to everyone. Scale up the digital transformation to educate the 1.6 billion kids who missed school in the pandemic. Educate girls, including the 130 million not in school now. Ensure women's equal share of decision-making. Eliminate discrimination against female workers and boost productivity by 40%. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind. We have a to-do list. We have the resources. 8 years to reach our goals. We're on this planet together. So let's work together. Let's get the list done.
Well. So, a couple of things.
Please
that
unpack
I wanna-
away.
Yes. Okay. First of all, you noticed they referenced the pandemic, right?
Yes, of course.
And things can't be the same as the way they were before the pandemic.
Oh no, sir.
There has to be a whole new paradigm. So, this plays into the way things were before the event as opposed to the way things are going to be after the event.
Easing you into a great reset, just like they said, forgive debts. That's going to be more and more present. And quite frankly, Scotty, I'm all for it. Hey, you want to knock it out? Yeah, honest to God, you got to remember that. Funny that they always bash the Jews on a lot of things, but you know what the Jews were central for? The banking system. They were the ones that created it all. And funny enough, in the ancient Hebrew world, every 7th year was a Jubilee year, right? And you let the land rest, but you also forgave all debts, and you started over. And when you do that, people don't become perpetually in servitude,
But
you take away that slavery aspect of it, that oppressiveness. So,
but it makes me think of. It makes me think of. Before 9/11, after 9/11.
Absolutely.
We were willing to accept a whole new paradigm after 9/11, right? The police state, the surveillance state, all of this stuff that was once not acceptable and that people were like, no, all of a sudden they were okay with. Now you have, what are we going to accept now after the pandemic, right?
It is it's such a slow roll Hegelian dialectic. It's not like problem, reaction, solution, boom, boom, boom. It is like, I mean, on us, it's just so soft.
And then you have these paradoxical sort of things being presented in this video, right? Where they're harping on empowering women and the woman woman this and woman that, and the women need to, not face discrimination, and they need to have more power or whatever. But these are also the same people that are, telling you, women need to accept that a a biological male can compete against them in sports, that a biological male can use the same bathroom as them, that
Yeah.
and all of this.
Talk about like,
Right. So which one is it? Are you empowering women or are you not?
are you denigrating them? Are you? I mean, you're basically
yeah.
marginalizing them. And so, think about that. Think about how their fanaticism for inclusion runs contrary to their desire for getting really what is it at its core? At its core, it's we need as many women in the workforce as possible, right? The thing is, technology is not where it's supposed to be relative to where they thought it would be. You can blame the pandemic for it. I think that's just a convenient excuse. I think it's just the technology isn't quite where they wanted it to be at this point in time. However, it's getting there fast, to the point where once human labor becomes obsolete, you have to have that question. You have to have that discussion of how do we function as a society? How do we, if we're all capitalists, right? You have to consume, you have to purchase. It's all based on labor for money transfers so that you can take that money and get goods and services. Well, if people can't work and earn a living because human labor is obsolete, well, now what do we do? Is it become Star Trek?
Matrix.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I don't have that answer, but no one's having that discussion except for those with the universal basic income strategy. And funny enough, there are companies out there right now, AI companies, that are doing just that. They're trying to perfect a universal basic income solution where AI would manage it.
This goes to what I was saying last week. Like, right, are they going to start utilizing AI to like manage the economy and try and,
I would imagine at some point in time
right,
that comes in.
And use it to, dole out, find out how this universal income, might work. And
Zbigniew,
yeah,
Ziggy was a technocrat, right? So he was all about the technology, and of course he was fundamental with the Council on Foreign Relations and all the Rockefeller foundations, everything. The Bilderbergers. Ziggy was there, and let me tell you something. He was all about the technology, to the point where you have to understand China was nothing more than a beta test. No more than they were the factory of the world for 20 years. And now people are fleeing there left and right because it's been really a mitigated disaster, the China experiment. And the issue you have now is you've really empowered for lack of a better term, Mao 2, and things are really kind of unfolding in a way that I don't think they anticipated. We'll just put it that way. Or maybe they did. Now, you could say, so you could say all that AI implementation and all that control was nothing more than a beta test. And then you see it's implemented soon after in Glasgow, where smart city, right? You have all these smart cities named throughout the world, and all of these control devices, all of these technological ways to monitor, they're all implemented in these smart cities.
Tiny house.
And so here we are now, 2023, and you have AI in its, to me, I want to say it's exploding in
Yes.
use in every facet of life.
It's on the upward trend of the sigmoid curve right now.
Right? I mean, you
And,
can't. I never in
yeah.
our lives have we ever witnessed a technology that has advanced as rapidly, that will have unbelievable impact on our lives, and be implemented in such a fashion and at such a speed that we won't be able to control it. That's the problem. It's not the freaking steam engine, man. That took like, what, 20, 30 years to really get going, and people figured it out and pounded it out. And yeah, it was transformative to society. But AI
is going to change society, I think, at the same level, if not more, than the internet in general, when people had access to the internet. I mean, it's that sort of, leap.
So then the question is, you got that. Then here we are, humanity. We have these tools. We know that it's not just the earth that's changing. We know that it is cosmic change that is cyclical at the planetary level. It's cyclical at the solar system level, at the galactic level, all the way through to the universe. There are cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles, and we're in a cycle to the point where, things are going to change with our climate, and over time, our magnetic field's going to continue to weaken, and it's going to affect the way we live. But we have a technology that, hey, might be able to save us. Now, you put it in that context, and it sounds a lot like a savior, if you will, or one in place of, we'll just say. So that's the scary thing that really kind of gets me, is that you look at prophecy, you look at what's coming with artificial intelligence, and how people are going to look at to it as a solution more and more and more. Crazy, dude. I think we got to go to break here in just a minute. So
I think so.
So we're going to go to break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the politics side of things. So don't go away. Hour number 2 coming up right after these messages. KGRADB.com. We'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money-back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Tower number 2 here, the Freedom Link, Scotty Lopez, Joe Joseph. We're here talking about, well, before we get into politics, there's one thing, and Ange was saying this during a break, that, if you just focus on the fertility rate, that's only one side of the story. At the same time, the other half is the excess deaths, Scotty. The amount of people that have died that haven't been accounted for, either through, like sleight of hand, with the statistics, and it's getting worse and worse.
Right. So then that actually that makes that number significantly higher, right? That makes that birth rate sort of number even worse, because not only are you not producing enough children, you're also having a large chunk of the population die off as well, on top of it, compounding the issue, right? And not only are we dealing with the excess deaths due to the jabby wabby, but you also have an incredible amount of people dying from drug overdoses.
Just take a look.
Self-deletion, all kinds of stuff is contributing to this.
So for 1 second, and by the way, this is not just COVID, right? We're not talking COVID.
Right.
I will say that did COVID kill people? Absolutely. Whenever you have a new virus, it's going to kill a lot of people before the immune systems all kind of start to work. Oh, we found that out, right? Even though they poisoned people with a bunch of crap, when they even said themselves in TED Talks prior to that, these gene drives, that these CRISPR kits could be put into people and change people forever. That they can unleash these things, and we need to be very careful. In 2015, they were talking about that at TED Talks. And then not 4 years later, they're using them to combat this virus with less than 1% death rate. And what does that mean? I think it was certainly they knew what they were doing, and everybody has immunity, and no one's going to get in trouble, and no one's going to go to jail, and all of that stuff is going to get swept under the rug. No different than the SV40. Oh, guess what? The SV40 was in one of those versions of it. Yeah. So these things this is a problem. It's a big problem, and it's relevant in the data. Look at this data. Now, this data, I can get into it by age and everything else. I'm not going to do that because it takes a lot of time. But if you go to database.earth, now this is where you get all the birth rate. Let me just show you this. This is just amazing stuff, right? You can get all the births, all the deaths. You can go through all of this information, not just for population, but also, atmosphere. What's our atmosphere made of today? Oh, that's great. How about energy? All the energy that humanity needs on a global scale. This thing tells you, and it's cool. It's a great tool. But the population one, that's the one that's the best. And it shows a huge spike in deaths, especially in people aged like mid-20s to mid-40s. they're seeing an absolute huge spike in that, to the point where life insurance companies are starting to really, really panic because they have to pay all these premiums that they really didn't account for or budget for. And it's going to be more and more of a problem as time goes on. Now, you take that and you couple that with the birth collapse, the collapse in births, and that is just, it's an unbelievable collapse in population, to the point where I think they're really understating numbers when it comes to just how severe this is. But there are some governments now that just cannot hide it anymore, to the point where they now have to solicit for people to have kids.
And it's interesting because, this is something that Elon Musk understood, right? Because, you have all of these billionaires and these globalists and all of that they say, oh, overpopulation, that's the main issue. There's too many people, overpopulation. And Elon was like, no, that's not the issue. In fact, it's the opposite. We're not producing enough children, and we are headed for
But is that not an excuse to implement yet another part of your sustainability development goals? And I'll show you the list. Right. If you can control the amount of births that are happening, if you can begin to do that, right, it's going to end up being this. Look, we told you that there was a population problem, a crisis that needed to be resolved. We asked you to have kids. You didn't do that. Well, guess what? We have the DNA database. We know and have all the DNA of all of the people that have been born, and we're going to start making clones in order for the human race to survive. Yeah, Brave New World. Your alphas, your epsilons, your betas, your slave class. Why not? Why would that not be a logical progression? Think about it. And the simple question would be, at this point, would China do it? And if you say yes, is it something that China would do to help them maintain or boost their power? Absolutely, they would. They would try to do it. I'm sure they are. They had that scientist that was doing genetic testing and genetic manipulation on China, kids, and then he disappeared. He got disappeared. Right. But point is, he's doing it where they banned it in all these countries. This guy's doing it. Yeah, of course they're doing it.
China, they just straight up don't care. They'll do things like that. They don't
experiment on the Uyghurs. They have an entire population of an indigenous people that they use just like the Nazis used during World War II. Which, by the way, folks, let's be real, okay? When you talk about the experimentation that went on, and you just generalize it and say, "Well, the Nazis did it." What is that? Who was it that did that? Who funded those operations? And when you look at it, it were prominent banking families, that funded it. Ford, Henry Ford was a big funder of this kind of stuff. Maybe not knowingly, but he was funding it. And through IG Farben, they were doing all these experimentations, and that's where Mengele came in and did all that stuff. But it was all scientific, and that was the population that they used to get that information. No different than China and the Uyghurs.
Because people seem to forget or don't know that the whole extermination plan put in place by the Nazis and the whole final solution sort of thing, that was all inspired by the American eugenics movement. Hitler himself said that that's what inspired him to go that route, and so it's not like this was just some idea that just randomly popped up out of the ether for them. This was something that they saw someone else doing it and were inspired by it and were like,
Yep.
oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Let's just do that and just kind of take it a step further, you know. And
they're taking the only hope, truly, if you think about it, the only hope that the world had left really was the United States, and it was squandered by generations that didn't pay attention to the BS that was going on with the control freaks. And oh man, here we go. We were this big imperialist thing that we were never meant to be, and now it's collapsing, and it's collapsing on many fronts, and it's conveniently all happening at the same time during one of the most pivotal, whatever you want to call, elections. I know that they make a big deal out of it, but what you'll come to find out is it's more probable than not Trump or Biden will not be running for president by the time November next year comes around. And, they are conveniently charging Hunter in such a way that is going to make it almost impossible for Biden to run for re-election now. Or he dies, or it's outed that, boy, his condition is really a lot worse than they have made it out to be, And then Trump, I mean, you see what he's up against. It's not logical to think that one of those trials is going to hurt him, or it's a very good chance they could take him out if they find that the court stuff isn't working. There's a whole host of things. And then what do you have? So, I don't really buy into the election so much. Never have. However, I can certainly see, again, the appeal to emotion, the hopes and dreams shattered. But at the same time, while all this is going on, you have the border that's just being flooded and flooded and flooded. And the social welfare system is collapsing, and state budgets are collapsing because of it.
That's the Cloward and Piven strategy.
That's a Cloward and Piven strategy. Absolutely right. And I have something here that is a TikTok video of a migrant who's in the British asylum system, right? And they're having a big problem. You saw what happened in Ireland, right? This guy here, watch this. Can you see this? Look at this.
So guys, we've got a new story coming in today, and it's believed that migrants who are being funded by the taxpayer are earning up to £1,500 a month working illegally for fast food firms like Deliveroo, despite ministers demanding the practice to be stamped out. An investigation exposed today how couriers working for Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats are secretly subcontracting out their deliveries to migrants who are actually banned from working in exchange for a weekly fee of up to £100. They're able to do so as the tech giants behind the UK's £13 billion food delivery business allow low-paid substitute riders who they have not vetted to work for them. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, last night branded the practice completely unacceptable and warned it is encouraging further illegal immigration. He said last month, demand for the food delivery giants end the use of unverified riders to prevent the scourge of illegal working.
Yeah, that's GT Bulletin over on TikTok. I'll tell you what, there is a serious issue here that is happening. Same thing in the United States. It's collapsing. It's collapsing the governments, and that is a big problem. It's a big problem that you have to understand.
These local governments and stuff, they can't sustain this.
And there's no money to bail them out. It's all gone, right? It's pointless. And as soon as you open up the printing presses again, inflation through the roof.
Again.
So you see what the natural progression is, and then you see the UN sustainability goals. So what are they going to do? You have that. When you have that kind of inflation, you have massive austerity to combat it. Massive austerity. And that's the tough part, because they the solution is going to be akin to, I guess you're going to see why they've been so hot on pumping the tiny home
right.
thing, right?
Right.
And it makes you wonder, the whole real estate thing is all because your retirement funds, your Wall Street funds, your Black Rocks of the world are buying up all the real estate to artificially inflate the prices. That's really all it is. There's no housing shortage. It is just these Wall Street asshats that are going along and playing a part in this plan to make everything so unaffordable, to get people on their knees begging for a way out, begging for relief. And they're going to get it in the form of digital currencies, 250 square foot apartments, cubes, and just more and more acceptance of less, no private property. You're not in control of your body. You have to carry your cell phone everywhere with you. That kind of thing.
You're gonna end up living in the government housing block or apartment, packed in like sardines with everyone else, and you'll get your your government rations, your UBI, and that's that. You're not gonna live in that big old house that you wanted to live in, because damn it, that big old house is a burden on the planet, and it's not a sustainable solution. So yeah, it's and they're making this like a trendy thing too. You see it with, like, I've noticed like a lot of videos on YouTube lately where they're showing these have you seen these pod hotels? They're these hotels in Asia where you sleep in something that is, it's a pod. It's a, and you're like stacked on top of other people, and it is super like.
But they make it look at sometimes they like romanticize it.
Right, that's what the thing is.
Check this out. Hold on, check this out. I'm gonna put a little thing. You're right. I'm gonna just give an example here. Tiny home ideas. Here you go. Here's some tiny home ideas. Let's just take a look. Let's see. Where's my tiny home? Right here. Boom. Oh, tiny home. Look at how quaint that is, Scotty. I mean, are you feeling it?
You paint it and dress it up to look nice.
Are you feeling it?
Hey.
I mean, look at that. Now that is efficient use of space right there.
Do you know how much of a nightmare a tiny home is to somebody who's in a wheelchair?
Look, dude, it kind of goes like this. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? It kind of goes like that. The handicap, well, in the post, in this kind of world that's to come, there are no handicap.
There are no handicapped. I forgot. No. Right.
You become Soylent Green in about 20 years. So yeah, people are just going to eat you along with the crickets.
Hey, if I end up being a protein bar for somebody, hopefully I taste good, man. I guess.
Wow. But I mean, think about it. It all kind of plays in. This is what they're talking about. This is what they want to get to. 500 million people. And they want to do it, and they are pushing the solar and the wind and the stuff and the things, but really that's not the thing, and they know it. That's a money-making scheme. And that's a money-making scheme. It does two things. It makes money, but it also does what needs to be done. It helps them combat the gas companies in order to destroy them, because they don't want that to be. Fusion's coming. Okay, fusion's not far off. And when that happens, that's going to be transformative, to where they will have the power to really, boy, fusion's going to be another biggie, when you think about it. Now, do you have cold fusion? Can you get it down to a smaller size? Are you talking about free energy? Because really, in effect, that's what it ends up being, very, very cheap in the grand scheme of things.
What is it? They say you put in 50 watts and then you end up getting out something like 500 or 5,000. I can't remember the conversion, but it's a crazy.
It's staggering. It's a sun.
Right.
It's the sun.
Right.
And the byproduct is helium. That's what your byproduct is in the end of everything. So it's not really and it takes a pound a day, I think, of fuel, where it takes a staggering amount for fission. I can't remember.
Well, and since we're supposedly running out of helium, that probably is a interesting thing. We're able to produce helium,
Ain't no problem there, dude. I like it. It. So yeah, I mean, there's reasons why they're pushing the wind and the solar. It's crap. Wind and solar's crap. Solar works, yes, but the problem that you have is weather, and over time they lose their efficiency, and they're very high maintenance. There's a lot that goes into it. Wind is even worse. Those large turbines are very, very, very hard to maintain.
Yeah. Speaking of which, my parents have signed this petition. They're trying to put in a bunch of wind turbines here in Shawnee County, and they're signing a thing saying, no, we don't want this crap, here, they're trying to do some kind of a big solar and wind initiative thing.
They do it. Yeah, they're doing it everywhere.
And I mean, you go out into western Kansas, and it is just turbine. It's insane how many turbines you see out there.
Right. And this is great. This is wonderful. But unless you have the storage capacity to be able to take all of this energy that you can make when it's sunny or when it's windy and store it, whatever excess you have, for that rainy day, or for that less windy day, you end up having a big problem. And then you're not making anything at night.
It's not consistent.
So when everybody comes home,
it's not a consistent source of energy.
So you need a consistent source. So what they do now is they have these, basically they're LM2500 gas turbine engines. And the reason why they have those is because gas turbine or jet engines can start up with no warm up. They just go, right? They're off to the races. So they can start up and spin up fast and give you that emergency kick in that you need. But now these run on diesel fuel. Oh man, that's not so good. Oh, that's greenhouse gas. But that's what you have to have when you put in a system like they have with the wind and the solar and the stuff and the things, because they don't have the storage capacity to be able to store it enough to be able to meet the demand when people get home from work, that need to do their laundry, that need to charge their car, that need to do all that stuff. You can't do that.
There are so many wind turbines in western Kansas that they're actually affecting the weather radar.
The weather.
They're causing a problem. No, with the ability to actually read the radar, it's causing artifacts and glitches where all of these wind farms are. And there's been like an issue where like they're trying to see if a tornado is going to form in a storm, but they can't tell because of all of the artifacts and glitches, and it's actually like creating a problem of being able to like track storms and stuff because there's so many of them out there. It's insane.
Yeah, back in 2016, Aaron and Melissa Dykes and myself, we all collaborated. We did this documentary called Obsolete. And you can go on YouTube and watch it. But that is in 2016. We had known for a couple of years, and we're diving into, what do you do when human labor becomes obsolete? And all of this stuff plays into that. All of it, whether it be the labor, whether it be the migratory thing that's going on, They're moving, they're shifting entire populations to different regions of the planet. That's what's going on right now. And then once they get all of these regions pre-positioned the way that they want, boom, great reset. Everybody gets put into their little cubies, no private property, everything's green, blah, 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 blah. You have all these new smart cities going and growing all over the world.
They want their global population centers, and then the rewilding, of all of the other land.
Man, the rewilding thing. Oh, Jesus. So glad you brought that up, because holy crap, there is even more with that. So of course, once this happens and they do Great Reset, if you can imagine 1984, right? The movie, not the book. Just think about the movie for a second, because in this case, it is the visual when Winston opens the door and he sees the green fields and just all of this land that has been untouched by humanity for some time. And it's all rewilded. Why? Because that's how they controlled everybody in this controlled environment, living in their cubes, doing what jobs they were supposed to do, speaking the way they were supposed to speak, and using all the terminology and everything for, Ingsoc was the corporation, and you were in perpetual war, and you were always working for the machine, and everything was rationed. Oh, did you get your ration of chocolate?
Right.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And everybody was just giddy over it.
Get your government ration,
That's right. And nobody knew what reality really was, because everybody was totally controlled. And if you can't see that that's what's going on in full effect right now, I mean, I'm going to give you some more evidence. I'm going to pull up now something that something called the American Stewards for Liberty found when they were researching this Inflation Reduction Act last year. And I didn't know about this. I mean, I know about the Rewilding Project, and I know that it was pushed through the United Nations. But, there were maps. You had a lot of corporations that were kind of playing into it, but you never really had the government putting their oomph behind it. We'll put it that way, putting their strength behind it. Well, check this out. It says the Wildland Project's return. While Congress was passing the Inflation Reduction Act last month that included $20 billion for the climate crisis conservation programs, the radical left was rolling out the next targeted phase of their attack to achieve 30 by 30, permanently protect 30% of our lands and oceans by 2030. Of course, a sustainable development goal. That's our portion of the agreement, of the world's agreement to basically protect half of the world's oceans and lands. And we do 30%, because we're Americans. We lead the charge, right? That's what we do. So an article entitled Rewilding the American West was strategically released in several progressive publications and then quickly reprinted and cited by others around the time the Inflation Act was passed. And the Oxford Academia Journal Bioscience was first. And then this was interesting. The World Economic Forum put it out. The plan is to remove livestock raising, mining, oil and gas, timber production, and eventually recreation from the Western federal lands and prioritize those areas where wolves and beavers, reside. And they've also identified 11 5,000 square kilometer reserves that total a total of 13.5 million acres. These reserves are to be connected with additional federal land acquisitions and conservation easements on private lands to create continuous wildlife corridors from Mexico to Canada. This is nuts, isn't it? The rewilding program or plan also fits nicely with the sagebrush sea network advanced by green groups a few years back, covering the greater sage grouse habitat across the West. and this plan touched 13 states. So if you see here, you see this map. That was the Sagebrook Sea Network that did that. This is what they project will be rewilded with, when this goes through. And so, and this was all really floated as part of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They kind of put it all up together, right? And then Senator Manchin put it through. Isn't that interesting? So then you look at, so over in Norway, I think it was Norway that they just forced farmers to kill 30% of their livestock in and around there, to the point where the farmers, the people, had no say in it. It was incredibly unpopular, but it's these control freaks that are pushing these things down onto the people. And they're doing so when there's a food crisis, when there's a poverty, extreme poverty all over the world. How many billions of people are considered hungry right now, and things aren't getting any better. Cost of living's going through the roof, and it's all done by design. So the purpose of that documentary that we did was to talk about that. What happens when human labor isn't enough anymore? It's obsolete. What do we do when we've lost our way, our purpose? How does society transform itself? And which way are they going? And you can see more and more.
You're going to have a lot of what they consider useless eaters that they're going to have to deal with. Because...
But they're doing it by attrition. You see that,
right? You're
going to have these wars, and these wars are going to take out generations of men, as you've seen, right? Mm-hmm. And to think that the Israeli conflict right now isn't going to metastasize, you're sadly mistaken. It will do so. It's just not the time to do it right now. But there's a lot of regional and global alliances that get called into play when certain countries get pulled in.
Right. The Israeli-Hamas conflict, I believe, is the catalyst for some kind of chain reaction that we're going to be seeing come down the pike.
And Ukraine was just something to get your whistle wet, is basically what it is. Really, right. Truly, if you think about it. And then if you take it a step further, then it would make perfect sense that if that were to happen, and it would be very advantageous for, say, Russia, China, Iran, who are bound by treaty to protect each other and to respond, right? Whereas Israel, here we are, and if we get dragged in, NATO gets dragged in, right? That's how World War I started. That's how World War II started. It was all bound by treaty.
I was just about to say, and history has a very interesting tendency of repeating itself or echoing itself in certain ways. And if you look at a lot of the stuff that was going on pre-World War II, pre-World War I, there's a lot of that same sort of atmosphere, I guess you could say, that we're encountering right now, except it's with the overlay of this technological advancement and AI and all of this crazy stuff that's thrown into the mix. But I mean, look, like before World War II, during the Great Depression, there were a lot of conflicts that were starting to pop off that didn't even really have anything to do with Germany. There was global unrest that was already taking place, whether it be like Armenia or, some of these, areas, like the Baltic region and things like that. There was, when you have economic hardship, it usually leads to hot wars and conflicts, because
very much
that is a way that countries it's kind of like their last resort of being able to get out of that situation
and wrench the control back. You get to basically, once you do that and you get those emergency powers, you have a way, you have the power now to transform society the way you need it.
Right. Oh, and have you been paying attention to what's going on down in Venezuela?
Oh yeah.
It looks
and
like
Guyana?
they might be going and invading Guyana
Well,
at any
Lula,
moment.
Lula has intervened. So Lula in Brazil has intervened and has warned Venezuela, no bueno, you better not do that. So we'll see what happens. But now if Central America, this is again why all of a sudden would Venezuela do that, right? Unless Russia and China aren't asking them to cause some shenanigans to start.
Right, because you have Maduro, which is a radical socialist.
And I guarantee
I'm sure he's pretty buddy. Right, he's pretty buddy with the CCP and whatnot, and there's probably a lot of influence there because we all know China has a lot of influence in South America and whatnot.
Yes,
so, very interesting.
Now
like
there's
I said,
three fronts. Now there's three fronts.
Yeah, we have all these things that are bubbling up in different areas, different conflicts that are starting to kind of manifest. And
now, what happens when China? Right. What happens when China goes and starts just, maybe sending more fleet action through the straits, maybe more exercises? Now all of a sudden you have to counter that. You have to show your presence here. Well, how are we going to do all this? You see that it's crazy,
right.
But this is how this is going to happen. It's going to be a wild and crazy year, folks. Which is why I wanted to bring up this gentleman by the name of Vivek Ramaswamy, because I love this guy.
Ramaswamy, he's great. I
can't help it. I am truly. I don't think Trump's going to make it. I just don't. I don't think Biden's going to make it. I think that they'll be foolish enough to think Gavin Newsom is electable. Minus tremendous voter fraud, probably going to happen. But I like this guy because he tells it like it is. I mean, in a way that no one else does, and does so with a intelligence, some good stuff behind him. Hey, look, we all make mistakes. No one's perfect. But this guy here is about the most human out of all of them, and the one that I can relate to the most. So
right, he's kind of like our new little Ron Paul we got.
Like our new little Ron Paul, yes, very much so.
Right.
So it's like, look at this is funny. So the mainstream media, I guess he called Nikki Haley a fascist for thinking the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID, right? Over this. The Great Replacement theory and everything else. And look at this, the pointless war in Ukraine. He's slamming Haley and Biden. The neocons, of course, he fat shamed Chris Christie and said he was the only candidate who would raise questions regarding the January 6th riot and Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11 and more. Holy crap, that would be great. He also suggested that the 2020 election was stolen. Come on, guys. Of course look, you can believe what the talking head said and everything else, but when you had a pandemic and you had all those mail-in ballots, I'm sorry, it was Tammany Hall 1863 all over again, and it was corrupt, and both sides were corrupt. So it was just a mess. It was just a mess. And really, when it boils down to it, two wrongs don't make a right. So we need to just get it straight, right? Do it right this time. So he also said the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but rather a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform, and that the 2020 election was stolen by big tech. And it was the Great Replacement theory that really got the hornets buzzing, with New York Times writing that it was a racist idea that minorities, sometimes manipulated by Jews, want to replace white Americans, none of which Ramaswamy articulated. So The New York Times wrote, the Great Replacement theory has been creeping into the conservative mainstream, popularized by hosts like Tucker Carlson, and have been referenced by several mass shooters. Oh, but now we're going to bring mass shooters into it. Right. Interestingly enough, listen to this. This is Vance Jones was left shaking after hearing Vivek speak at the debate.
And the smug, condescending way that he just spews this poison out is very, very dangerous, because he won't stop Trump, but he's going to outlive Trump by about 50 years. And you're watching the rise of an American demagogue that is a very, very despicable person. Yeah. And I was shaking listening to him talk, because a lot of people don't know that is one step away from Nazi propaganda coming out of his mouth.
Oh, lordy, lordy. Oh, lordy, lordy.
Right. Oh boy, you get those those woke snowflakes. I was literally shaking.
Yeah, shaking. So he says, except Jones himself is a big fan of the Great Replacement theory, which Vivek fired back in Jones's face with a 2021 video of the race hustler saying, quote, the request from the racial justice left. Listen to this.
Asking the white majority to do something is difficult. And I think it'd be easier if we just acknowledge that it's difficult. No ethnic majority group in 10,000 years of human history that I can find ever went from being a majority to being a minority and liked it. And that's basically the request from the racial justice left, is that we want the white majority to go from being a majority to being a minority and like it. That's a tough request. And the reality is that change is hard. Change that you want is hard. Change that is good is hard.
No.
So that's pretty interesting. So he throws it back in his. That's the value of Vivek Ramaswamy, is he's quick-witted, right? Comes right back and boom, and hits him with his own words. And that's great. Now on the world stage, that would be even better, because this guy would hopefully not be swayed into more foreign wars, and instead focus on fixing what's left of whatever's left of the United States. And there's not much left. I hate to say it. A lot of people still look fondly on us as this big cohesive country. And I mean, maybe we would be, much like, on 9/11, it surprises the hell out of me that everybody came together the way they did, but we did. And, of course, no one knew the real reasons why and everything else, but none of that mattered on September 11th, because we all came together and it was the biggest come together moment. Ain't nobody, no nothing. We were all American that day. That much I can tell you. It didn't matter what it was. It was that unbelievable. And I know I say that because there's a lot of people now, Scotty, that, are listening that weren't born on 9/11.
Right. Right.
So it's something that I can't speak enough to, that crisis severe enough will bring a lot of people together. But it can also at the same time cause a lot of unrest. And that's what I fear, is that the Soros money, the dark money that's out there, is going to stoke a lot of riots. You're going to see a lot of the crime start to spike again. If they cut interest rates like I think they might, or they stop quantitative tightening and start quantitative easing again, these are things that are going to do a lot of damage, not to mention the fact that, is there an appetite for American debt anymore? It seems to be waning. And these are all what I would say are death nails in the coffin. It's terrible.
Right. And speaking of like developments that are occurring in South America, did you see what's been going on in Argentina as well?
Yes. So over there in Argentina, you have the exact opposite.
Right. Yeah.
They're gonna
that's
they are
crazy.
embarking on the great experiment. They are saying it's gonna be a painful ass transition. It's gonna hurt like hell. He's been telling everybody, brace yourselves. This next couple of years is gonna suck ass. But he says, I promise you, if we can get through this and make it through, and it's gonna suck, we're gonna come out on the other end so much better. Because we're gonna be lean, we're gonna be mean, and we're gonna be ready to rock, and we're gonna have done
This
it
guy,
through
he's like
fire.
what he's like a libertarian anarcho-capitalist. I mean, he's like Ron Paul on steroids.
Malelli, I think is his name. It's Malelli. Yeah. So anyway, interestingly enough, he's the exact opposite of what you're seeing right now here in the United States, much like in Argentina currently, where you can't get goods and services because everything's printed, everything's fake. There's not enough. You've got inflation like crazy, over 140% this year in Argentina. You think we're bad? It's terrible. Look at New York, where you had black families going and minority families going to the food shelters, to get food bank for their turkeys for Thanksgiving, and they can't. Why?
Right.
Because they gave them to the illegal immigrants. And you want to talk about anger, and that's where I really, really worry about where the spring, we had the Arab Spring over 10 years ago. You can see, like, remember the George Floyd riots, things like that. You're going to start to see maybe race in a different way come about, where it's more immigrant or anti-immigrant type of animosity.
Right.
You're going to see that spike.
A lot of these African Americans in these poor communities
they're getting poorer fast.
They're getting poorer, and then they're seeing these illegal immigrants.
I mean, we all are
put to the head of the line.
We all are. We all are.
Given all of the
I'm telling you, where Section 8 is involved and everything else, it is increasingly acute.
And it's causing the African American community to wake up to the fact that, oh, hey, you know what? These Democrats and these
it's wrong, right? They're shifting. They're shifting over.
Maybe they didn't have your best interest in heart, at heart. No matter how much they told you, and no matter how much they promised you,
African Americans, Cuban Americans, they're all starting to see that it was all a lie. It was all a lie. And that's the problem. So now everybody's coming together. Kumbaya, right? But that's typically also associated with a 9/11 style moment. And the FBI director, Christopher Wray, went before Congress last week and basically said that very thing. He said that we as the United States are facing so many threats at the same time. He says it is as acute a problem as he has ever seen. And of course, it's all created. It's all created to take away the power from us, to destroy us, and then to implement their system. It's all part of that plan. So you just have to remember that. It's very, very important to understand. Also, you have these South American gangs that are coming up from Central and South America with the explicit purpose of breaking into these mansions. I know that Keanu Reeves just got broken into. It's a pretty dangerous situation here as far as that's concerned. Yes, my dear.
Extreme cultural differences, like practicing Santeria.
Yes, you have Santeria. You have things like that. You have the disease part of it. There's a whole host of issues. And then, of course, you have the terrorist thing. But they're now just going right into people's homes. In upscale neighborhoods of Detroit. WXYZ Detroit reported that at least 30 to 40 homes in upscale neighborhoods across Detroit had been targeted by highly functional, well-trained gangs from South America. And these thieves are using high-tech jammers to disable Wi-Fi home security systems, and then they're primarily after cash, jewelry, and expensive handbags. Yeah. So,
and you're seeing, And you're seeing, much like you kind of have the African American community starting to resent these illegal immigrants, you also, I don't know if people really understand this or understand, like Latin culture and whatnot, but there are a lot of, Mexicans, and native Mexicans or people of Mexican descent that do not like people from Honduras and Guatemala and South America, and there's a lot of tension between Mexicans and people from those areas.
Yes, there is.
As
There,
well.
absolutely, and that
yes.
foments a whole other, that's a whole other issue that creates
Right.
more chaos, more unrest. You have the like Ange was saying, the religious aspect of it too, where you have people that practice Santeria now introducing that into American culture. That if people understood what that is and everything else, holy crap, man! I mean, crazy sacrifices, the whole night. You don't want that taking a handhold in
a lot of weird
weird
like
stuff,
saint
like
worship
voodoo,
and weird
shit,
kind of
and that's all well and good, but no, thanks, appreciate that. So with that, we're almost out of time. I do want to say next week we won't be here. However, the following week we will, right before Christmas. I do want to put something out for everybody, and I thought this was absolutely cool when you showed me this today, dude. And I so want people to support Alex Jones. I mean, you think what you want, say what you want, but that MFer has been through some crap, been totally deplatformed, and now, as a way to help support him, they have a new video game that just came out, Alex Jones NWO Wars. And you can go to alexjonesgame.com and download this game. It is absolutely hilarious. I have never seen anything like it in my life. Here's a trailer. Are you ready? Let's do the trailer.
Yeah, go for it.
First came Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Super Mario Brothers. And now the ultimate retro nostalgia throwback game. I present to the world Alex Jones's New World Order Wars. They're turning the friggin' thugs game. I'll eat your ass, you Nazi scum. Let's free the Patriots and defeat the globalist tech geeks.
We are going to defeat the globalists very bigly.
This game is mostly peaceful.
Woo!
I'm going to lower the world's population. Oh, big deal. I'm taking you down, rapist.
I did not have sexual relations with that saxophone.
Download it now at alexjonesgame.com, because as we all know, anything badass gets censored.
I'm sorry. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
If you're a fan of the old school Contra games or Metal Slug, if you remember Metal Slug in the arcades, you're gonna love this game. It's absolutely genius. It's hilarious.
I can't take it. So yeah, please. And if you take a look, it looks like Musk is going to hopefully reinstate him soon. And if that's the case, who knows? Maybe we start punching back a little harder. I'll tell you this: that they're not going to like it. The powers that shouldn't be are not going to like that. So I don't know. Maybe they'll all leave, and then we can have an even bigger echo chamber. Hooray! we can all talk about the stuff that we want to talk about. Yeah, hooray! No, I you know what? X got 10 million new users last month, according to Linda Yacarino. Yacarino, pardon me. So I don't know. It's pretty cool. If you ask me, if you can support Elon Musk, if you can support the platform, just use it. Perfect. Snub it in their face. Tell them that screw you. You're not gonna control the public square. They tried, but they can't. So we're out of time. So we're going to go. But please go to kgradb.com today. Check it out. You know, become a member. That would be really helpful to Bill and company, and, you know, try to grow it. Make it better. Make it bigly. That's what we're saying.
Bigly.
That's
Bigly.
right. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you later. Take care.